Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fumbling Gurus, a podcast that talks about the NFL. And now, your host, the one, the true, the Eagles fan, Mr. Gannon.
What's up?
You have the Tampa Bay fan repped by his shirt, Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, welcome back, everyone.
And myself, the Dolphins fan, John. We have a lot to discuss this week, and well, there's been a few things to occur in the NFL. One, we're going to talk about really quick, get it over with. We've talked about it a lot, and then we'll move on from there. So, the NFL did what we all expected to do, and that is they are appealing the 6 game suspension on Deshaun Watson. Speculation is all over the place from 10 games and a $10 million fine to a full year. We'll see what ends up happening, but I don't feel like we need to get into it more. We know that the punishment was light. Good job trading for him, Browns. Enjoy the punishment. Now, there was something that kind of big that happened though, and it really was a little lackluster because it was kind of a done deal about 3 months ago. And that is the Broncos officially sold for just a measly $4.65 billion. Gannon, this owner is worth $59.8 billion, which is more money than the top five owners, richest owners combined. Does that give the Broncos an advantage at all?
Listen, a little off topic, but not so off topic. My favorite college team for football is the Ducks. Our rivals are Oregon State. The Ducks have more money than the Beavers, and because they're backed by Phil Knight, which has a lot of money, and Ducks are just a better team because of it. I think that this might correlate having that extra money for better equipment, better training staff. Like this might be something. Isn't the owner the guy for that one's Walmart?
Yes. Now, the NFL has a cap, both a minimum and a maximum salary cap, which does help, but there is such a thing as cash flow, and the Raiders kind of got in the position where they had to ship out Amari Cooper and Khalil Mack because they really couldn't afford those guys because of the cash flow, not because of the salary cap. Does this, now that they're able to do whatever they want. I mean, the guy's worth nearly $60 billion. He's the top 20 richest people in the world. I mean, how big of an advantage and how big is it for the NFL to have an owner of this influence, Tom?
Yeah, I don't know, because I know when they originally were talking about this deal and what it would look like, there were memes all over the place of, the Walmart logo is now going to be all over their jerseys and all over their logos, and so, I mean, I hope that doesn't go that route of, kind of commercializing the actual sport. Um, that we're seeing, I hope that none of that creeps in there. But yeah, like you're saying, I don't see a huge difference aside from now. I guess that's not a problem for them, right? If you watch some of the European soccer leagues, they don't have salary caps and things like that. So they're owned by like oil tycoons that literally can go out and buy whoever they want to put on that team. So that that doesn't necessarily come up in the NFL where we can just go buy whoever we want now because we have all this cash flow. Um, but yeah, I'd say the biggest aspect now is like you said, there's no more question of can we keep this guy that we really want, despite everyone has the same limitations in terms of salary cap, but we don't have that limitation outside of that anymore. Um, so yeah, I'd say the biggest thing for me is I just hope we're not seeing Walmart plastered over everything, or maybe the opposite. All the WalMarts have Broncos gear now. That won't be any fun either.
Agreed. Well, talking about money and teams, there was a kind of a naming right issue that just came about, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals will no longer be playing in their stadium. Well, they will be playing their stadium, but a different name. They have sold their stadium name. I can talk good to Paycor Stadium. Well, I understand the NFL is about money, but man, Heinz Field is no longer Heinz Field. The Dolphin Stadium has been changed from from 20 different names. Why? Is are we, why? Gannon, why?
As money rules the world. That's why. Short answer.
There you go. Money rules the world. Talking about money, the all-pro linebacker of the Chicago Bears, he wants a new contract, and he feels slighted by the Bears, and he has demanded a trade. Tom, we already talked about the Bears. They're not good. They're bad. What is this dude losing their all-pro linebacker?
I mean,
But
if you're already bad, can I guess there's two routes you can go, right? You can't afford to lose anyone else, because then you're not even competing at that point, right? Or you can just say, screw it, we're completely rebuilding, and the season is whatever happens, and we are looking forward to the next year, 2 years, 3 years down the road. Um, so I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if I'm an all pro linebacker. Do I want to stay on that team? Do I want to stay with a team I don't think is going to win or have a chance to compete? Probably not. Especially when in the NFL you have a window of maybe 5 to 10 years where you're playing your best. Do you want to waste a couple of those years in a rebuilding team? I don't think so.
completely agree and understand. Well, I think it's time to move on to what hopefully everyone has tuned in for, and that is to break down the NFC West. We have four teams, and this was a very good division last year. These all well, three of the four teams made the postseason. Three of the four teams were very competitive, and even the last team was competitive until an injury kind of ruined the season. Well, there's been some changes, there's been some additions, there's been some subtractions, and we're going to get right into it. We're going to discuss the Arizona Cardinals. We're going to go in alphabetical order. First things first, we got to talk about Kyler Murray and that new contract. They ponied up some money and they gave it to him. Gannon, is this a vote of confidence for the young quarterback?
Look, they went 7-0 last season, the start of the season, and then they just kind of crumbled um, the last half of the season. I don't. And then if you look, they made the playoffs, but they were just as bad as the Eagles almost, like when it came to the performance. And a lot of that was Kyler Murray, and he just gets this big contract that pretty much cements him as the starting quarterback. And then you just lost um, DeAndre Hopkins and Marquise Brown, which was viable for them. Man, I really just don't know how this Cardinals are going to survive. Like, I don't know.
One of the more interesting things about the contract, they gave him a big deal, but they put in that study clause that he has to study
Mm.
4 hours a week of game film. And then there's rumors that he's a big gamer, and so they went back and somebody from Reddit, and I wish I could give credit to where credit was due here, but they went back and they cross-referenced all of the double experience weekends with the games that week on Sunday, and he was statistically worse in every single game where there is double experience for Call of Duty. Is this something? Is there something to this, or is this just somebody that's yes, they don't tell the full story?
Yeah, let me. So I doubt what you're. So, um, shout outs to the user negative B. He's the one who put this together. But from what I'm seeing, I mean, I don't know. I read through his stats, and so he goes on, like you're saying, he compares the weeks that there wasn't double experience, and he considers double experience any type of in-game event, right, for Call of Duty, and versus weekends there were events, weekends there were not events, and I mean, yeah, there's a negative trend. Is the sample size big enough? Probably not. Is the stats different enough? Probably not. Like he shows completion percentage. He's 67.29 on weekends without an event, and 67.17 on weekends where there is an event. So I mean that's not even statistically a change in the completion percentage. So I think that was part of like what he's trying to show is like, yeah, he's making fun of them because there is a decline in all these stats, but it's not actually a decline that shows a correlation, right? So I'm not buying into it. And to me, if you can't have a life outside of football, like basically they're saying you have to be here all the time is trying what they're trying to do with Kyler Murray, right? Like you have to be studying film, almost like Peyton Manning. You know, all the uh, references to him that I've seen in comparison of like the opposite of the guy that's just always watching film, always doing whatever. There was, I remember watching a documentary where like Peyton Manning's wife had to help him get dressed in the morning to set up these outfits because he was so focused on just playing football that he did nothing outside of football. And I think, the generations are changing a little bit where we're getting away from some of that, even outside of football, right? People don't want to be just doing their job the entire day and worrying about their job 24/7 and doing all this stuff. So I don't see any correlation. I don't know what's behind. Maybe they see something or see a trend they're trying to break, or maybe they're just trying to get him in the groove of becoming like a Hall of Fame quarterback. And this is what it takes. Let's help you get there by kind of mandating it. But I don't like having that clause in there. I think that's a little overstepping, in my opinion. That's like your work telling you that, you got to come in on the weekends and study for a certification and get to the next level. It's like, well, some people don't want to do that, and I don't know. I think it's overstepping. I don't know the reason behind it, but it's not a good precedent because a lot of the other contracts use contracts that were already established as precedent for the next ones. So I hope we don't start seeing everyone have this in there.
We'll say Jamarcus Russell. There's a story that went around with the Oakland Raiders, and he was drafted number one overall and was big, strong quarterback. Go him. Well, they were concerned that he wasn't watching the game film, and so the coaches gave him the tape, but it was blank. There was nothing on the tape. So they gave it to him, say, on a Friday, or Monday, and they came back to him on a Wednesday, and they said, "So, did you watch the tape, and can you tell me a little about it?" And the guy said, "Yeah, absolutely, I watched it," and blah blah blah, which reaffirmed that he wasn't watching it.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, you had the Peyton Mannings, who their life is all about football. Isn't that though what kind of separates the greats from the goods from the bads? Is their study habits, is the way they're so focused? I mean, I get it. Your life is not 24/7 football, but your NFL career is also only 7, 8, 9 years if you're lucky. I mean, I believe the average is 3.5 years in the NFL. Most aren't even in the league after two. So if you're a star player, shouldn't you be wanting to put that extra effort in, making sure that you're on top of it? I mean, as the quarterback, you're the guy, right? The receivers rely on you. The offensive line relies on you. I mean, you're the face of the franchise. You get the wins, you get the losses because of it.
But I guess my counter to that would be maybe he doesn't want to be. Maybe he's okay being a average quarterback. And you're forcing this upon him that's against his nature, presumably, because you're having to force him to do it. Is that going to lead him to, well, next year I retire, or I don't want to play for the Cardinals anymore because you're getting me out of my rhythm. You're trying to make me someone I'm not. That's what I see in it, right? Why would you be mandating this unless he isn't doing it and you're trying to force him to do it? So I don't know. Like I said, I'm just taking guesses here, but it, it, it just seems out of scope, as all
I
I'm saying.
think more importantly is if you don't have that faith in the guy, then you shouldn't give him that contract.
Yeah.
Period. He's
Yeah.
not worth that money. Gannon, we've kind of did a little bit of talking. That you want to add something?
Well, they removed it. I don't know if you guys know that they did remove the clause, but
Okay, so they ended up removing it. I did remember hearing that, but I
they
wasn't sure if that was confirmed.
they removed. I did have to look it up. They did remove it. But even then, what other quarterbacks has that in their contract? Not very many. If there is, it's not front page news. This was a huge outrage for a lot of people that this is even in there. But yeah, I think that they were right to remove it from his contract.
Yeah, for sure. I think their biggest loss, and we're going to get talk about this. You meant brought it up. The one of the best receivers in the NFL, DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, a couple of years ago, I would have said he was the best guy. He suspended four games,
It was 6.
6 games.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's a big loss. That changes their offense. I mean, he is a guy that you can double team him and he's still open. Gannon, how does that fundamentally change the offense? And I know they traded for Marquise Brown, but he got arrested and charged with criminal speeding. And I know there's some question marks on whether or not, how he'll be in the season. What does losing receivers like that do to this team?
Well, man, you can't lose guys like that if you want your team to succeed. If you want that 7-0 start, you can't lose your top players. Um, like I kind of hinted at before, the last half of the season just was not good for Kyler Murray. So I'm questioning whether even with them that he would be the caliber that the Cardinals office thinks that he is, giving him that contract.
Losing those receivers, those are big losses. Tom, I know that you've been a fan of DeAndre Hopkins for many years. You love that trade. Talk to me about losing him for 6 games and then the possible loss of Marquise Brown as well, making AJ Green their number one guy.
Yeah, man, I don't know. Every time it's like Cardinals are one of those teams you look at them and it's like, man, they have all the pieces or most of the pieces, and they just kind of slowly fall apart. Like that's kind of what happened last season. They just slowly fell apart, and then there was like a cutoff point where they just didn't function anymore. Um, and man, that's gotta hurt. Like you're saying, Hopkins isn't just a wide receiver. He's part of that team that off the field and everything just bolsters everyone up. And I don't know. And for I mean, I say it's a stupid decision, but having the suspension, what it was for performance enhancing drugs or whatever, right? Like violation of that. So just for something as silly as that to lose them for a third of the season, and then Marquise Brown, even stupider decision. I think if you guys hadn't said it yet, going like 125 in a 65 mile per hour speed zone. Um, I mean, I don't know. To me, like if I was on that team, even if I'm not on the offense, it's like demoralizing to see your team just kind of fall apart one piece at a time. And it's like, well, who's next? What's going to happen next? Like, come on, guys, let's get in order. Let's have a good season. Let's stop doing these stupid things. So I'd say it's the biggest thing is I just feel like you have to keep the locker room energized, and I don't know. I don't know if Cliff Kingsbury can do that, especially after you saw like such hot and cold last season. Can he keep them with that momentum, or even create the momentum? Because right now it seems like they're going the opposite direction.
I said it last year, and I kind of stand by it. I don't believe in Cliff Kingsbury. I don't think he's a very good head coach. I don't think he maximizes the potential and the talent on that team. Chase Edmonds, he's no longer their starting running back. And James Conner, who had a great year, a touchdown machine, is now their guy. I mean, I know that there's some talk about this kid Eno Benjamin, but what do they do at running back? And I know they love to throw the ball, but they're missing receivers. This to me, this is a big loss. Tom, I mean, is their offense? They're supposed to be this exciting offense. Are they going to be that exciting this year?
I don't know. But I was taking a look at this division as a whole. There's not much here for running backs. I think Seattle might have maybe the strongest core there. There's some here and there, but I have a lot of questions for most of the teams, and Arizona is one of them. I think Connor can definitely come in and be good, and I think he will. But yeah, what else do they have going for him right now? They need like I was set for Marquise Brown to have a really good year. I believe he was teammates with Kyler in college. They both went to Oklahoma, I believe, when I was researching. So like I was set for him because I think he fits this offense way better than he fit the Ravens. Um, I just don't think the Ravens were always run focused and Lamar Jackson focused, and it was just trying to throw it up to Brown whenever he gets a chance. And I think he fits this offense a little better. And I was excited for him because he's one of the guys I always picked up in fantasy because I always had high hopes. Maybe that's part of what I'm doing again here. Um, but I thought for sure this was going to be a season, so I hope he can kind of turn it around and there's no type of league suspension or anything with what's going on. But yeah, I don't know. The offense has a lot of questions, especially now that it really doesn't have weapons outside of quarterback. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I kind of want to move on from the Cardinals. So, but Gannon, you've got one more thought, and then I'm going to ask you how you think their season's going to go. Gannon, go.
All right. Just real quick. One thing we never talk about, schedules. The first three games are the Chiefs, the Raiders, and the Rams. They're not going to have a 7-0 season this year, I can tell you that.
That's very, very true. Well, Gannon, you brought up the schedule. I'm going to start it with you. How does this team stack up in the NFC West?
So this is a pretty stacked division. Um, don't hate, but I got him at three.
And I'm going to kick it right to you as well, Tom. How does their season end, and where do they end, kind of how do they finish in this NFC West, and where does their season end?
Yeah, yeah. I think one thing we didn't mention. I'm just looking up some other items here. They picked up J.J. Watt, didn't they? So he's joining the defense. So there's some bolster there on defensive side. Um, man, I was flip flopping with them and the 49ers in this division. Um, I'm gonna put Cardinals at two if they can get everything sorted out. I think they come in second in this division.
You know, I wanted to put them at three. I really did, but I was kind of flip flopping between two and three, and ultimately it comes down to quarterback for me. And I do believe that even though I don't trust Cliff Kingsbury, I do think that they'll be able to get enough out of their guys. They're going to get Hopkins back, and I do see this as a team that will, 10-7, 11-6 is a very real possibility, and I think they'll finish second in the division. And I don't know if they'll make the playoffs, but either they'll be right at the cusp or miss, right there, and I don't see them going very far. We'll see how it plays out. But we're jumping from the Cardinals, and well, we need to talk about the Super Bowl champions, and that's the LA Rams. And there's been nothing, everybody was excited all the way through the the off season with this team. They were able to keep their guys. They were able to sign Cooper Cup. Aaron Donald came back. Their left tackle did retire, but they were still getting their guys, and they signed Allen Robinson. And the question that everyone keeps asking is, how are they doing this? Tom, how are they doing it? They don't draft anybody. How can they keep adding players and stay under that salary cap?
I don't know, man. Every time I look around, they've added another like all star to the team. So I don't know how they've been doing it. I think, and part of the main success for me is McVay. Um, I don't even know his secret. I don't know how he's doing it. But he like everywhere you look, he's killing it in every direction. You know, all the coaches underneath him are getting hired for other spots and moving up to other teams. All the players are performing under him. Super Bowl win last year. A big championship win against the 49ers, biggest rival. There's a big aspect to that game. And all the players are returning. Most of the players are returning. So they want to play for him. They understand what he's doing right now, and that he has basically the hot hand right now. Um, so I mean, if I was looking at their success, I mean, I don't know. You can't look further than him.
They did reward him. It came out today that McVay did sign a contract extension. The numbers have not come out yet, so we can't report on that. But I do agree. I think McVay, big part of their team. Gannon, we talked about, how they signed all these guys. There's a lot of hope and excitement. Matthew Stafford has some throwing issues, typically more seen in baseball players. It was basically tendonitis in the elbow, if I'm not mistaken. There's speculation that this is a season-long nag. Like, this isn't something that's just going to go away in a couple weeks. He's now going to be a lot of rest. Are you concerned at all about the Rams?
He developed this season, or
Yeah, this offseason.
oh yeah, that might be an issue. It's uh pass first offense, and so I these guys are going to be relying on him to get that ball to them, and if he can't throw it, that's going to be an issue because I don't see him running.
Now, last year, I happen to know that you drafted Henderson, and he was a pretty good player for you. Now, Cam Akers comes back from his ACL. He kind of wasn't very successful, but he was the lead back in the playoffs. But that was 5 months after an ACL injury. He's now fully recovered. You mentioned running the ball. The Rams love to feature one guy. Is Cam Akers a viable fantasy option?
I mean, I'd have to say yes at this point. You just mentioned that their quarterback is might have throwing issues, so run the ball at that point.
Cam Akers, Henderson, Tom. If what do you think the split's going to be? Is Akers the guy, or is Henderson going to get a lot of carries?
I I don't know. I would be very hesitant to draft in fantasy either one because, I mean, what if you looked at the Super Bowl? I think Cam had like 20 yards in the Super Bowl. So I mean, it was something like 13 carries and 20 yards, and I don't know. They just don't focus on the run, and I'd be very surprised if they, even with a nagging injury, that they go that route with the receiver core and everything else they have. Uh, they won't win if they focus on the run. Um, so I mean, I don't know. I don't know who I'd pick in that. I think Cam Akers has more potential, but we haven't seen much from him in that offense. So I'd want to see a couple games before I say that he's the guy, right? I think they'll probably do a little committee thing with him and Henderson, especially the way he was performing last year. So um, yeah, I hope I've heard certain news places state that Stafford's injury isn't as bad as it seems. I've heard the opposite of that as well. So I don't know. It's one of those things you don't really know until he's actually on the field and you start seeing what it looks like.
Stafford may be one of the, not maybe, is one of the toughest quarterbacks out there. I
Hmm.
mean, a few years ago, he torn labrum and he was out there throwing a touchdown pass. Just insane what this guy goes through and what he can do. We talk so much about offense, and I so much of that's because of fantasy football. We all three of us run a league together. We love it, and it takes up not a lot of our time, but it definitely takes up time of our lives. That's why we focus on the offense. But I don't think it's fair to talk about the Rams without talking about this defense. I mean, you've got Jalen Ramsey, you got Aaron Donald, and oh, yeah, they lost Von Miller, and that's a big loss. But they also got a pretty good veteran in Bobby Wagner. that this defense is stacked. They are an all-star defense. Tom, is it fair to talk about the Rams offense without talking about their defense?
No, considering it won them the Super Bowl and had a huge impact. Yeah, I'd say again, everywhere you look on this team, it's just stacked, right? You can look at any position and see an All Pro there, Hall of Famer there. So yeah, again, going back to I don't know how they're doing this, but the defense is still stacked. Defense is still going to be good. I think, and I don't know if this still holds true today. I would assume it does, but I know Donald, when he signed the extension there, was the highest paid non-quarterback in history in his contract. So I mean that speaks to how much they put into the defense and how much it still means to this team to have them together and to be a core of what this team is.
Shannon, is this the best team in the NFC?
That's a heavy question. I mean, last year, without a doubt, right? This year, I can't really tell you. They're up there. They're top five, maybe even top three. I don't know if I can stamp them as the best. Oh, but
Go ahead, finish your thought.
but you talked about the defense. I mean, they did have uh, a, tied the record for sacks last year in the Super Bowl. So
Yeah, this is a talented team. I mean, they've got, as Tom said, Hall of Famers and All Pros everywhere you look. I like to call them the paper thin team because they spend a lot of money on key guys and expensive players, but then they lack a little bit of depth. And so the injury to the wrong guy can really, really hurt this team. But they're also super talented and are kind of able to overcome an injury or two because they got an all pro right next to the guy. They lost that left tackle. I do think that's a big loss, but I'm gonna final thoughts on the Rams before we finish how they end up. I'm gonna kick it to Gannon first. Any final thoughts that I didn't talk about?
no, I'm pretty sure you covered it pretty well. But I do want to hear if you think they're the best in the NFC. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on that. That's interesting.
I think when you look at the NFC and you look at the losses of Devontae Adams with the Packers, I think the NFC is a two, and this will be a little bit of a spoiler for coming week here. I think the NFC is a two-team race for the best team, and the Rams are one of those two teams. But Tom, final thoughts there with the Rams? Anything that I didn't cover?
Yeah, no spoilers, but definitely not the best team in the NFC. So we'll see next week, maybe. I'd say one final thought for the Rams is, one of their key players last year with Andrew Whitworth. He was a 2021 Walter Payton Man of the Year and everything. So I think that's a huge loss for on the field and off the field for that team. I don't think the impact may not be as big. Again, they have all stars in a lot of positions, but just something to mention of. He I felt was one of the driving forces. Like when I was watching from the sidelines, from whatever, that's how I felt about him being on the team. So again, we're talking about kind of the Cardinals locker room. I think that's another loss for the Rams in the locker room for everything. So, um, but yeah, I definitely think a team to beat. Put on your resume, you beat the Rams at their peak, because I think this year they're still the same strength they were last year.
Yeah, the Whitworth there's was their left tackle, and that's a big loss. That's a key position, but they had to know it was coming, so hopefully they're prepared. Well, Gannon, where do you see this team finishing up, and where do you see their season ending?
So definitely number one, right? I mean, Super Bowl champions. I feel like they cemented the place that they're. Uh, as for season on how that's gonna go, I think that they Final Four.
There you go. NFC Championship will one of those teams will be the LA Rams. Tom, where how does this Rams team end their season?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, I think to them it'll be a disappointment if they're not in the Super Bowl again. I think if I'm on that Rams team, that's my goal this year is to repeat. I think you have the people to do it, you have the team to do it, and that's what you have to be thinking if you're on that team right now. So yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, we're putting the Cardinals at second in the division, so of course Rams have to be first there.
I'm not going to disagree. Rams clearly the best team in this division, assuming Stafford's arm is good to go. If Stafford misses a lot of time, this is a team that's going to struggle. This quarterback is so important of a position, but I have to assume the best, and I'm with you. This is a Super Bowl competitor. This is a team that should be in the mix at the end. Will they make it? It's hard. It's hard to repeat. It's hard to make it to the Super Bowl, but this is a team that certainly can do it. And now we go to the opposite end of the spectrum here. We've got a team that, well, many people thought was going to be really good last year, the Rams, to a team that many people thought was not going to be very good last year. That's the San Francisco 49ers. Jimmy Garoppolo leads their team into the playoffs and they kind of go far. Matter of fact, they beat the Rams in the regular season, swept them. And of course, we know what happened once the playoffs came around. But they drafted Trey Lance number 3 overall. And they gave up 2 first round picks to do it. Well, 3 technically, but they got one back. And so they draft Trey Lance. Trey Lance sits all year, and Garoppolo has an up and down season. And the latest depth chart, they've got Jimmy Garoppolo number 4. Trey Lance is their guy. Gannon, second year quarterback. He's big, he's flashy. Is he gonna be good?
I don't think he's cooked long enough, honestly. I think that Jimmy G was their guy. I'm not totally behind Trey Lance yet. I haven't seen enough from him. Um, they still have Jimmy G at this moment. I mean, there was plans to trade him. That never happened, so he's still on the team. He's getting paid a lot of money to be second. But honestly, time will tell on this one. I would have to say no. He probably wouldn't be a Jimmy G caliber if I had to
You don't
give
even
that
think
to
he's
him.
a Jimmy Garoppolo caliber.
No, I really don't. But this is
Wow.
the team. This is a team that knocked out Green Bay last year out of the playoffs, and also knocked out the Cowboys out of the playoffs. And those were good teams last year.
Tom, I do not hold Garoppolo very highly. And it seems to be a lot around the league not view Garoppolo very highly. Am I crazy to think when he says that he's not even Gannon says that Lance isn't even the caliber of Garoppolo that they're if that's the case, I mean, is this a bottom half team?
Yeah, I got flashbacks to last couple weeks when John was stating that Derek Carr wasn't what was comparable to Cousins. I don't know. We haven't seen Trey Lance, right? Like too much, right? We don't know what he's like as a starting quarterback coming into the season, having the off season, being part of the first team reps and getting having a team that is his to command, right? But man, there was some weird stuff I was hearing with some of the I read well watched some of the interviews that were coming out of the off season for some of the team here, and George Kittle, the tight end, was talking a little bit about like he didn't talk to Jimmy G throughout the whole off season, which apparently is not uncommon for him. For Jimmy G to just kind of go off and do his own thing in the off season. Um, but it's like being the core of the offense, the guy, the captain, essentially, right? Um, I don't know. You think you'd want that reputation and having, the relationship with those people that you're working closely with and going to be leading on the team. So that's one thing I heard Trey Lance does much better job at is building those relationships, making sure that he has that off season, off the field presence, and stuff like that. So that could be a huge thing for some of the people on the team to get behind him and have a little more, um, have his back a little bit more. But yeah, I don't know. It's a weird situation because why would you put Jimmy G as fourth in the depth chart? I think he is coming off a shoulder injury or something in the offseason, but still, he's not fourth on the depth chart, right? So it's a weird situation. They don't seem to really want to be talking about it a whole lot. So I think there's more going on, and we'll may or may not hear about it, but I don't know. We'll see maybe what Trey Lance can do.
Yeah, it's interesting. All right. I mean, when you get what to the NFC Championship game,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and you're the starting quarterback, you typically don't get replaced. And if you do get replaced, it's because your defense was amazing and carried you. Talk about Trent Dilfer back in the day, but that just doesn't happen nowadays. So to see it happen, it's odd.
Yeah.
But why were they able to do it? And I think you can safely say, well, it wasn't because of Garoppolo. Yeah, he was the guy that threw the ball, but you had Debo Samuel, who was an absolute freak last year. I mean, really, when you talk MVP, he had to have been in conversation. He had over 1,000 yards. Was that 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving, or something ridiculous like that? He did it all, and that's just unheard of. You still have Brandon. I'm gonna say his name wrong. Ayuk, who was drafted in the first round. He's got a lot of talent. He's shown flashes of being really good. George Kittle may be the best tight end, all around tight end in the NFL. Elijah Mitchell came out of nowhere and had a great season. They drafted Trey Sermon early last year or 2 years ago. They still have their elite left tackle. They've got some really good players on defense. This is a really, really, really strong team all the way around, except quarterback. Gannon, what I mean, is that how you view this team? Is this a pretty complete team?
That's exactly how I view this team. The question mark is undoubtedly on Trey Lance for me, in my opinion. I If they end up keeping Jimmy G, I bet if he doesn't do very well, they're swapping him out.
Kyle Shanahan is the play caller. Kyle Shanahan is the head coach. Kyle Shanahan runs their system. But their offensive coordinator was absolutely loved. George Kittle wanted in his contract that the offensive coordinator would not be allowed to leave as long as he's on the team. Their offensive coordinator is no longer their offensive coordinator. He's a head coach somewhere else. Is that a big loss, Tom?
I mean, it would have to be. Um, I mean, if you have people that are putting in contracts this time, I didn't even know you could do that. Maybe I need to do that when I have a good manager.
Hey,
Hey,
You
if
you
I'm working
can't.
here, you're not allowed to leave.
You can't. It got shot down, but he did ask. He asked.
But yeah, I mean, clearly it's a huge right. We've been talking about this with the last two teams, the locker room. That's where a lot of games are won or lost before they occur. Is what's going on, how you develop for a game and get ready for a game. But that was one thing I was going to mention. We talked about how this team is performing with seemingly a lot of questions, right? How did the 49ers make it to that championship game last year? No one thought they were going to. They were the Cinderella story through like every playoff game they were going through. You even mentioned it. Green Bay, Cowboys, teams that were very good losing to the 49ers. Um, and I think that goes back to the coach. I think Shanahan is a good coach. He clearly knows how to make these teams perform even without a great quarter. I mean, imagine what the 49ers would have been last year with a Kyler Murray or a Matthew Stafford. Um, they have all the other pieces. So how they're navigating this or what it looks like, I think is the next step. And offensive coordinator is a big question there because he's a big part of that. So it could also bring a change they need. Maybe they felt they needed someone to come in with a little bit different perspective because they haven't been able to figure out this situation. So someone has to come in and shake this up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't fire the guy. The guy left to take an opportunity that only 32 people get to say they have that job. So it's not necessarily they're trying to shake something up, but I do understand what you're saying that, it's an important piece and it is a question mark. This team, though, do you see, I mean, again, I'm gonna throw this to you and I'm gonna ask this question. Did they overachieve last year, or was last year the team that they were?
Look, if you want to talk about overachieving and you shouldn't have been there, you could look no further than the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't think that the 49ers were in that realm. I think that they deserve to be there. They played really well all season. They came up short against the Rams by 2 points, but you know that could have been a whole different story for the Bengals had they been there. But I don't know. I think that they did deserve to be there. I think that they have the power to make it back there. It all just depends on that one question mark, Trey Lance. So
Uh,
Miami owns the San Francisco 49ers first round draft pick next year. Does Miami have a top 10 pick with by owning that pick?
oh man, that's a tough one. I don't think so. I think the 49ers they're going to do what they always do, and they're just going to squeak by, somehow make the playoffs, maybe win a game or two in the playoffs, and then peter out. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think, are they a great team that I'm looking forward to seeing them win all the games like the Rams? No, but they find ways to win, and they still have a good core in most of the positions. It's hard to pick a team with George Kittle, Debo Samuel, Nick Bosa, Kyle Shanahan as a coach, and you're expecting them coming last in the division. No, they'll find a way to win some games.
Fortunately, that's the way I view this team. I think they're a very well-rounded team. And if Kyle Shanahan can maximize the potential from Trey Lance, this is a very good team. I wonder about age. I wonder about some injury concerns that they seem to have, but I think this is a good team. Gannon, any final thoughts with the 49ers? And if not, where do they end up in the division and where do you see their season ending?
even with the question mark of Trey Lance's quarterback, I think this team has enough weapons and their defense is pretty solid that second in the division and a chance at a playoff run again.
Same question to you there. This team, obviously they finished just short of being having a chance to be the world champions. Where do you see them finishing the year next year, and where do they stack up in the division? And then also, if you have any final thoughts about this team.
Yeah, yeah. Wasn't this the game that they had that interception that they dropped? That was like a clear interception right at the end of the game that pretty much would have secured it for them. So they were like one catch away from the Super Bowl last year. And man, I really think that when we're there, I put them in third in the division, but only because there's question marks. Only because you just don't really know what's going to go on. Same as last year. I felt no one really talked about 49ers. It wasn't really a team that was really on your radar. Yet they made the playoffs, yet they kept winning. So I think it's going to be the same thing this year where it's like kind of off the radar. They're going to do mediocre throughout the season, and they may or may not make the playoffs. They may or may not make a run. I don't know. There's a lot of question marks. And I think, as we start getting into the season, we'll see some of those pan out. But right now, I don't feel like I can put them higher than third place in this division.
Ultimately, that's how I feel. I think that while this team is pretty talented, I think they've got some skilled players. I don't think Debo Samuel will have the type of year that he had last year. And when you compare that to a rookie quarter or a first year starting quarterback, second year player, he's going to have his ups and he's going to have his downs. And I don't know if they can overcome everything, but I think that this is still a pretty decent team, and I see them finishing third. Unfortunately, in this division, it's a three-team race, and they're the third team, which leads us to we should wrap up this whole conversation because we don't need to talk about this next team, do we, Gannon?
That we do not.
So the Seattle Seahawks, they something happened this offseason. Gannon, talk to me. What happened? Where are they heading? What shift did they make?
Man, you can't talk about Seattle Seahawks without talking about Russell Wilson. I'm sorry, you can't. He's that good of a quarterback, you know? But they traded him to the Broncos, and now they have Geno Smith, right? And then Drew Lock. Yeah, that's I'm sorry, Seattle fans.
Wait a second. You're telling me that the Seattle Seahawks traded a top five quarterback?
I did say that.
Are they out of their minds?
If you're tanking, which we all know is not allowed in the NFL, for the draft room of next year, I think that yeah, they did.
So, Tom, their quarterback room is Geno Smith and the wonderful Drew Lock. Who wins the starting quarterback position?
I don't know. I was a Drew Lock fan heading into last year. He had a couple good games at the beginning of the season. But then I think if you look at who he's playing against, it was like the Jets and the Lions. It was basically bottom tier teams in the league, right? Um, and once he started getting a little competition, it went downhill from there. Um, I'd like him to win out. I'm not a Geno Smith fan. I would not like to see a team quarterbacked by him. So I think Drew Lock is going to be the guy there. Um, but man, I don't know. When we talked about losing Bobby Wagner, so that's a huge loss on the defense side. Losing Russell Wilson, huge loss on the offense side. But they still have weapons. It's just no one to utilize them. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. They added Noah Fant, tight end. Kenneth Walker has been doing well in camp, the new running back. I don't know. I don't know. They have weapons. I just don't see how you get the ball to the weapons. That's the problem.
So, yeah, I know you said you don't know, but if you had to make a guess, which quarterback wins the starting job?
I Drew Lock is my pick. I don't.
You're
I
wrong,
no.
and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
The opposing defense wins. I had that joke in my mind. I needed to get it out. No, I'm with you. Drew Lock should win it. You let the young guy play, see what you have, let him make the mistakes. Geno Smith is terrible and is not a starting quarterback. Gannon, they kind of had a low key great draft. They drafted their starting, like, they went two offensive linemen and with Cross and Lucas, and they've been playing well, and they're gonna be their starters. For a coach who I talk about this all the time, right? I like the new style offenses. And coaches that use the old style offenses don't last long and they don't have good offenses. Well, Seattle has an old school offense. They want to run the ball, 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 and then throw a screen. They do not want to throw the ball. They Russell Wilson cook. There's a reason why that was a thing. Let Russell Wilson cook, let Russell cook, and it's because they didn't. Well, he kind of gets the smile. He doesn't have the quarterback, but he's got the offensive line. They still have Penny as the running back. They drafted Kenneth Walker in the second round. They still have Metcalf on the side. They still have Lockett in the slot. They got Noah Fant to cover the tight end position. Is this team going to finally? Is this coach happy? He gets to build this old school run the ball down your throat offense. And if that's the case, are any of those running backs fantasy running backs, Gannon?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think that in one part of me says, yeah, he's probably pretty happy with rebuilding this team, but that's just it. He's rebuilding the team. How good is this team really going to be this season? I feel like he's going to bank for next year's draft and basically continue to rebuild it. I don't think that this is their every team takes it seriously, right? But I mean, I don't think that they're expecting a lot from this season. That being said, they had the 13th best defense last year. And with that draft, I think that they might stay with a pretty good defense. Seattle's, from what I remember, has always had a pretty decent defense. So, and defense wins games.
Um, do you agree with what he said? Do you have any differing opinion?
I mean, if you listen to Carroll and some of the teammates there, they've made it very clear they don't feel it's in rebuild. But how are you not in rebuild right now?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that's a little deflection there, like trying to, oh no, we're still giving it our all. We're still going to be a great team. Um, okay, well we'll see. Prove it, and then we'll talk about it. Do they have the weapons? Sure. There's still some great players on the team. It's the NFL. You made it to the NFL. You're you know. I just don't. There's too many key pieces missing, and I don't know if you're going with that route of a run first team. Maybe there's potential, but let's just go with the theory. That's your focus, right? And you run up against the Kansas City Chiefs, who just throw it down your throat and score 50 points a game. Is your running back going to score 50 points? I don't think so. So, yeah, I mean, that may be the route they're going. Maybe they'll have a decent season, but they can't compete with the very powerful offenses that are being run right now.
And their defense was 13th in the league, and so much of that is to do with the fact that they ran the ball and they just don't have a lot of possessions. Neither team gets a lot of possessions in their games. And yes, it's kind of good. Like your defense looks better, but I think that's just it. It looks better. It's not a real better. I don't trust this defense. I don't trust this offense. I don't trust their coach. You look up and down this team, and yeah, they got some good players, but it's few and far between. And I'm just gonna say this is a bottom five team in the NFL, right? Like this is definitely the fourth team in this division, and you probably can't list that many teams worse than them. Am I wrong on this, Gannon?
Hard to say. I mean, I don't entirely disagree with you. I losing a player like Russell Wilson, it's going to hurt anybody. But I've seen miracles happen before. And the Lions are going to do better. Like, I don't know. It's hard for me to just be like, yeah, bottom five, bottom 10. I don't know. But I think you might be right.
Um, any where does this team kind of stack up in the NFL? I mean, we all numbers wise know this is the last team in the division, but where do they stack up in the NFL? And kind of your final thoughts on this team.
Yeah, I don't see them winning more than, well, you can count on maybe one hand this season. But I will say they'll probably beat the Texans if they have to play them. So they're not the worst team. I'll leave it at that, maybe.
Seattle fans, you can hold your head up high. You aren't the worst team, and that's as far as we're willing to go.
They'll also beat the Bears. They'll also beat the Bears.
That might be true too. We'll see.
Well, guys, I feel like that was a pretty good breakdown of the NFC West. We definitely all agree Rams are the cream of the crop, and Seattle is, well, not good. San Francisco and Arizona are battling for that second and third slot. I am very excited for next week. We get to be the start of talking about the divisions where our favorite teams are in. So that's always really exciting stuff. As always, I want to thank you guys for stopping in and hanging out with us, listening to our takes, and and just being here. You can, if you're listening to this on Twitch, you can find us on YouTube at The Fumbling Gurus. And if you see this on YouTube and you want to catch us live, we're live Tuesdays around 9 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv, The Fumbling Gurus. And now my favorite part of the stream here, our podcast, Gannon. Final thoughts.
Listen, I'm so excited. I'm looking ahead to next week when we talk about the best division in football, the NFC East.
Tom, your final thoughts.
My only final thought is maybe, John, if you could tell us, last week the owner of Dolphins were suspended. Who's running that front office right now?
Did you apply?
Well, there's kind of a mixed result on that. Gwen Stefani, J Lo, one of them probably. I'm not entirely sure. My final thought for the stream or for everything is this: no more do we have to sit around and not watch football. We had football last week. We have football this week. Football is back, and I am so excited. Not just do we get to talk about it, we get to watch it. And until next time, bye everybody.
See ya.
Bye, guys.